Well, happy Thanksgiving to you. I've put the Phil Steele tour up early for you in case you got some extra time here on Thanksgiving Day. And of course, the games start Friday at 12 o'clock noon. So maybe a lot of you watch the tour, take the tour on Friday, but you'll be watching football. So I figured I'd put it up a day early for you. Nice week last week for the Phil Steele Plus tour, going 8-3. Brings the record to 38-27 on the season for the selections. And the quick hitters, a nice 31-23. Quick note for you Inside the Press Box members. It's been a disappointing season for Inside the Press Box. Not happy with the overall record for it for the year. And ironically, the plays that just miss out being on Inside the Press Box are the ones I put up here on the Phil Steele Plus tour. So a little disappointed. Got 7 plays for you this week on Inside the Press Box. Hopefully we'll have a nice big winning week for you on the Thanksgiving weekend. But I do put a lot of effort, a lot of energy, not only into the tour plays, but of course into the press box plays. And it's always disappointing when they're not doing extremely well on the season. All right, well, let's take the tour. And hopefully they have another nice winning tour week this week. We're going to start out with the underdog outgain the foe. It's 5-2 the last 7 weeks. Did lose last week with Arizona, but 5-2 over the last 7 weeks. And naturally, we've got Syracuse on one side here, and we've got Boston College on the other side here. And let's go ahead and take a look at the Inside the Press Box projection. And as mentioned, every week I mention that in the magazine we project the stats for the season. I am about to start work on the 2023 magazine. This Sunday, I actually start work on the 2023 magazine. Put over 6 months of effort into it. But the one thing that I do every year in the months of December and January is I take a look at what the projected stats were for the season for the college. And you're amazed at how, I am amazed, I should say, at how close the stats come to the actual things for the season. And it's the same during the season. When I look at the stats for the projected stats, by the way, it's page 43 of the magazine. When I look at the projected stats inside the press box, you'd be amazed how close these things are. And we take a look at this game. Boston College is a double-digit home dog. Yet my power play or my projections here has 341 yards for Boston College, 312 yards for Syracuse. So we got an underdog outgain the foe play here. Boston College with a 341 to 312 yard edge. And let's look at this one a little bit closer. When we do that, Boston College got blown out last week by Notre Dame. So you would expect their last 4 weeks numbers are not going to be very good, right? Well, actually, over the last 4 weeks, they're only minus 50 yards per game. Right down here, this last line is the last 4 weeks. And I find this valuable, especially this time of year. Use your last 4 weeks when you're using Phil Steele Plus because it gives you the current form of the team. Now, remember, just 2 weeks ago, they beat NC State. But here we go. They are minus 50 yards per game the last 4 weeks. Let's take a look at Syracuse. Syracuse is minus 149 yards per game the last 4 weeks. So look at all this red here for Syracuse. They are not doing well. They are being outgained by 149 yards per game. Boston College, even with last week's poor effort against Notre Dame, minus 264 is still minus 50 yards per game. In fact, if you look at the last 4 weeks' average game grade, Boston College is playing at a 91.5. Syracuse playing at a 93.0. Give the home field edge to Boston College. Final home game. And that says BC outright by 2 points. Now let's take a look at the series history here. And remember, the series history, you just click on the right down here on the opponent, and the last 25 years pops up. Now, you'll notice it's color-coded red and green. So you can see, the wins here. If it's color-coded in green here, that means that Boston College won. As you can tell here, if it's color-coded in green over here, it means Syracuse won. This is your spread record, which tells you if it's color-coded red for Boston College, that means they lost against the spread, Syracuse won. But here's the thing I want to point out here, is that the upsets in this series, if we take a look, well, I've got 2 of them open. Let me just open up one so we make it a little bit clearer for you. There you go. If you can take a look over the last since 2003, this has been an upset-dominated series. The underdog is 9-3 against the spread, and there have been 8 outright upsets the last 12 years. So 8 upsets in 12 years. I like that. Might be worth a look at Boston College on the money line in this game. They're plus 350. So take a look at that. But you've got an upset-laden series. You've got Boston College is minus 50 yards per game the last 4 weeks. Syracuse minus 149. And my computer says Boston College actually outgained Syracuse here. Add it all up. I'm taking Boston College plus the 10.5 over Syracuse as the underdog outgained the foe game. Now, every week for the last years, I've been doing a podcast with Stephen Hartzell and Wayne Cook. And every week, Stephen asked me at the end of it for a play. And I usually look at a non-Power 5 game, a game nobody's really looking at, and I give it to Stephen. Well, this week, Stephen asked me for a play. And I believe the play's this week. And, Stephen, you can verify it. I'm sure you're watching. I believe they're 8-2 this year. I think that's the record. I know we've lost 2, but I believe they're 8-2 on the season. And so they're doing quite well. They won with Utah State over San Jose State last week. But here we take a look at a game between UTEP and UTSA. And this is my official Stephen Hartzell play. I didn't have time this week. Guys, I am on 20 award committees. I've had 2.5-hour award calls, Football Writers Association All-American Team calls, John Mackey Award calls. I vote on all these different awards. And when I vote on the awards, I just don't pick an award and say, oh, I like this guy, I'm going to pick that one. No, I do my due diligence, I do the research, and then I carefully put in my vote on each of the awards that I'm on. So that took up a lot of my time this week. I do the podcast with Stephen on Tuesday. I didn't have time to come up with a play for him because usually I like to really look at the two teams, put them side by side, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to put UTSA on the right, and we're going to put UTEP on the left. So anyway, really enjoy doing the show with Stephen and Wayne. It's one of my favorite shows I do every single week. Been doing it for years. A lot of fun as always. Make sure you go to Learfield. Check out that podcast with Stephen and Wayne every Tuesday. But, Stephen, here's your play for this week. We're going to put UTEP on the right and UTSA on the right. They're the home team, UTEP on the left. Look at what UTEP did last week. They had a 525 to 71-yard edge. Now, if you click on the individual game stats, you see that Gavin Hardison missed the game. It was Kevin Brownholtz last week, but even with Brownholtz, absolutely dominated the game, 525 to 71. But I want to take you back to last year. UTSA had a perfect record. They were 11-0, so they actually had something to play for. Keep your record perfect. But they did have the CUSA title game on deck against Western Kentucky. So what happened in this game, if you click on the individual stats, Frank Harris against North Carolina, or against North Texas, I should say, they took him out at part of the game, and they let him get healthy for the Western Kentucky game. Josh Atkins played, went 3-9, and they actually lost that game straight up to North Texas, 45 to 23. Now, UTSA has been a banged-up team all year. They're playing great football right now, but they do have the big game on deck. But unlike last year, they're not protecting an unbeaten record. They already have 2 losses. So really, this game is quite meaningless for UTSA. Winning the CUSA title game next week is huge. And last year, they beat Western Kentucky. In fact, they actually jumped out to a big lead in that game. If you look at the individual stats there, you'll see they led that thing 42 to 13 and held on for the win. And by the way, thank you to collegepressbox.com for letting us put these up. Once again, if you click on here, and the purpose of this tour is to show you how to use Phil Steele Plus, you get the scoring plays for the game for last year. I want to show you the championship game is what I wanted to show you here. Click on that, and you get the total play-by-play of the entire game. I go through the play-by-play of every game from every game all during the week. That's what takes me so long to come up with all this stuff. So anyway, last year, UTSA mailed it in the game before the championship game. Now they're taking on a UTEP team that needs 1 game win to get to a bowl. So UTEP's going to be fired up. Look at their losses also. Their last 3 losses in CUSA play, they've been by 7, they've been by 11, they've been by 10. UTEP is getting 17 points in this game. So they've played their CUSA games close. They were dominant last week with a 525, 71-yard edge. UTSA has been a banged-up team all season. Look for them to rest some players, get them ready to win the CUSA title game next week. So your official Stephen Hartzell play this week. And Stephen, I hope you and Wayne both have a great Thanksgiving. I've got UTEP plus 17 over UTSA. That's your Stephen Hartzell play for this week. And check out that podcast every week. Stephen does a great job. Wayne does a great job. It's right there on Learfield.com. All right, let's continue on. I've got a red-green game for you guys. You know I love these red-green games. And this one, we're going to take a look at Utah against Colorado. Colorado's the home team. We're going to put them on the right, and we are going to put Utah on the left. Now, Utah is laying a lot of points, 29.5 points here. But just look at the red over here. Red numbers signify bad. And that's the thing I love about Phil Steele Plus. It points this stuff out to you quickly. You can see that Colorado has given up a horrendous 5.8 yards per carry on the season, 66% completions. They fail to run the ball 3.4, and they can't even complete 50% of their passes. Utah is off a loss. They do have a chance of getting to the Pac-12 title game, by the way. If UCLA beats Cal, which is expected, if Oregon State upsets Oregon, and if Washington beats Washington State, which is expected, and I'll have more on that later in this, then Utah, with a win here, goes to the Pac-12 title game. So they got something to play for. They run the football extremely well. And when you click on the individual stats, you'll see it's not just one guy here for them. They've got numerous guys that have been running the football all season. 687, Cam Rising's got 379. You've got Glover, Bernard. They can run the football with numerous guys. They're going against a weak rush defense. Cam Rising had an off game last week. I look for Cam Rising to bounce back and bounce back big this week with a big game. Utah's got a great defense. They're holding opponents to 80 yards per game below their season average, number 15 in the country. Even last week, they held Oregon to 182 below their season average. So you've got a team that's plus 117 yards per game the last 4 weeks against one that's minus 239, minus 206 on the season, 121. And look how Colorado's played against the upper echelon of the Pac-12. There are 6 teams I'm going to put in the upper echelon of the Pac-12. Oregon, Utah, USC, UCLA, Oregon State. And so when you look at these games, and so they played USC, and Washington's the other one, by the way. That's your 6 teams. So Colorado has lost by 47. They lost by 38. They lost by 39. They lost by 33. And they lost by 28. So their average loss to the upper echelon of the Pac-12 is by 37 points per game. That makes this line at 29.5 look cheap. And so you've got Utah, a green team, all green. They're good stopping the run. They're good against the pass. They're good running the ball. They're good passing the ball at 65%. Cam Rising off a loss, should have a big game against an all-red team. Colorado can't do anything. And Utah's got something to play for. We're going to take Utah minus 29.5 against Colorado. And once again, Colorado against the upper echelon of the Pac-12 has lost by 37 points per game. All right, I got some history plays for you. And the history play did well again last week with Notre Dame over Boston College. That was a nice one. But this one we're going to take a look. We're going to put Oklahoma on the left, and we're going to put Texas Tech on the right. Now, one thing I want to point out for Texas Tech, look how their defense has been doing the last 4 weeks, giving up 455 yards per game. They actually lost their star player, Peyton Wilson, first-team All-American linebacker. They lost him to injury, a bad loss there, and he really was the key to their defense. When I was texting with Joey McGuire about the All-American team, he said Peyton Wilson is the best player on his team, probably the best player in the Big 12. He's out. So that's a big loss for the Texas Tech defense. And what that does, it just strengthens my history on this one. I've actually got a double play on the history of this Oklahoma and Texas Tech game. Now, both teams are coming in with 6 wins. Remember, Oklahoma, a couple of their wins this year, if you click back and look at the individual player stats, they lost to Texas without Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel got injured against TCU. So that was a couple of Oklahoma's losses this year. Their offenses put up some good points. And last week against Oklahoma State, I'm not sure what the heck happened. They had 299 yards in the first quarter of this game. Look at this. Oklahoma had 4 touchdowns, 299 yards, led 28-0, and then they put the offense away. But that means they do have a really good offense and one that can put points on the board. They put 35 against a tough defense against Baylor, 499 yards. So I think Oklahoma has a potent offense. They're taking on a Texas Tech defense that's struggling. That makes it a double play this week. Why? Let's take a look at the history of this series. And when you look at the history, Oklahoma has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wins in a row in the series. Now, they haven't covered them all, but the games they haven't covered, they've been a 28.5-point favorite, a 13-point favorite, a 14-point favorite, and a 13.5-point favorite. Here they're only -2 on the road against Texas Tech. So they have won at Texas Tech here by 34. They won at Texas Tech here by 5. They won at Texas Tech here by 7. They won at Texas Tech by 12. They won at Texas Tech by 21. They can win here at Texas Tech, and they've won 10 in a row in the series. So I like Oklahoma minus the 2 over Texas Tech. Not a single one of these wins is by less than 2. They've all been big wins in the series. I like Oklahoma in the series with their potent offense against a Texas Tech banged-up defense, and you can see the red over here for Texas Tech's defense. The other thing I like here, and I used it inside the press box last year, I used a selection on the over, and it won 52-21. They got 73 points in the game. They were the total was 66.5. Look at this. Over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 straight overs in the series. I like that. I like to play on streaks. When you play on a streak, you can win many times and you lose only once. Once again, I expect Oklahoma to score, and Oklahoma's defense is not great. They're allowing opponents 26 yards per game above their season average. They're giving up 436 yards per game. They're giving up yards on the ground, and Texas Tech been running the football success for the last couple of weeks. So as much as I think Oklahoma will score and win this game, I think Texas Tech will be able to score as well. And the series history screams over in this one. Not the Oklahoma State game. Sorry about that. Let's go to Texas Tech. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 straight overs. Once again, I won with an inside the press box play on over last year. The over-under is 64. We're going to go with Oklahoma, and we're also going to go with over 64 as a selection for you here for the history play. So a double play, Oklahoma and over 64 in the Oklahoma-Texas Tech game. Look for Oklahoma to put up some points, and look for Texas Tech to put up some points, just not as much as Oklahoma. I got another history play for you coming up, and it's their 6th and final selection of the this podcast here. We're going to put Texas A&M on the right because they're the home team. We're going to put LSU on the left. Now, you know right now Texas A&M is not playing great. A&M is struggling. They had lost 6 in a row, and they only beat UMass by 17 last week. So you've got a Texas A&M team that is struggling overall, minus 2 yards per game, and not playing very well. You've got an LSU team that's playing its best football of the year right now. If you take a look at the last 4 weeks, they're plus 139 yards per game. They're holding their opponents, I should say, to 139 yards per game below their season average. They're plus 85 yards per game. They're playing really good football. Last 4 weeks, LSU is playing at 117.6 level. Even if you give A&M the 3-point home edge, it's 102. That's LSU by 15 in this one. But what stands out to me here is not only do we have an LSU team playing for something, playing on the road, and dominating teams as of late. Let's take a look at the series history, and this one really stands out. Once again, over here, this tells you who wins the game. So LSU is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 2 straight up in their 11 meetings. But look at this. If this is color-coded green, that means the team covered the game. Texas A&M has covered every single game against A&M. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 0 against the spread. So you have a team that's playing great going against a team that's struggling. LSU has covered 11 in a row against the spread. You know how I like streaks. You know how I like history. We're going to go with LSU. They've got great current form. Take LSU minus 10 over Texas A&M. All right, I'm going to get to your quick hitters. Let me just take a quick drink here, and I'll be right back with you. Let's get to your quick hitters for the week. I got 5 quick hitters. We're going to put Georgia on the right, and we are going to put Georgia Tech on the left. And let's move this over a little bit here. All right, Georgia Tech is on the left. And a couple things I want to point out here. First of all, Georgia has dominated the series. And last year, Georgia had the SEC title game on deck and blew them out, 45-0. So why would I like Georgia Tech plus the points here? Well, numerous reasons. First of all, last year, let's take a look at what Georgia was doing the week prior to playing them. They were playing Charleston Southern. So they basically had a bye the week before playing Georgia Tech. They played Georgia Tech and beat them 45-0. And then they had the big game against Alabama, which they lost, by the way. Well, guess what? This year, Georgia was playing at Mississippi State and at Kentucky, two huge SEC road games. They put a lot of effort into winning those games, and they did. So you talk about a flat spot, unlike last year when Georgia coasted into this game, needing a tune-up for the SEC title game. This year, they're off two huge games and laying 36 points at home. Now, you know that the Kirby Smart is a much better away favorite than he is home favorite, but look at this in the series. The home team is 3-18-1. Now, if the word win is out here, that means that the home team won the game. If the color code is red, that means the home team did not cover. The visitor covered. And when we look at Georgia Tech, we'll click on that. You could see here, that's already the same thing. It's the home team. The home team is got 1, 2, 3 wins against the spread. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18. What is that? 19? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 19-1 against the spread is the home team in this series. And then how about Georgia Tech? Now, they got blown out by Ole Miss by 42 early in the year. They got blown out by Clemson by 31. That game is actually closer than the final score. But since Key took over, their biggest loss was Florida State by 25. They lost to Miami by 21. But that was a lot of late points. It was actually a 7-point game in the fourth quarter, 14-7. So they've been playing scrappy football. They're catching Georgia in a massive sandwich situation, which they weren't in last year. The home team is 3-19-1 against the spread. I'm taking Georgia Tech plus 36 over Georgia. All right, let's take a look at a couple of FCS matchups. And we'll go here, team pages, and here, team pages. All right, we got playoffs starting this week, guys. And so let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of playoff matchups. So we're going to put Idaho on the left, and we're going to put Southeast Louisiana on the right. Now, the big thing here is, you guys remember Idaho. They used to be in the magazine not just a few years ago. So we got an Idaho team that has really impressed me this year. Idaho is 7-4 straight up, but they are actually 9-2 against the spread. And once again, if you go here to Phil Steele Plus, a beautiful thing, we have logs right here, college logs. You can get college logs for every team. So you want to know how they're doing against the spread? The win-loss right here tells you how they're doing against the spread on the year. But nobody's got this other. We have got FCS logs on every team. So if you take a look at Idaho, you could see win-win. They did lose against Drake. They didn't cover as a 32-point favorite, and they didn't cover against UC Davis here. Other than that, they have covered every single game. And I want to show you some of the games that Utah has played this year. Not Utah, Idaho. Sorry about that. Go to the FCS. We're going to get Idaho and put them over here. They played Washington State and took them to the wire, only lost by 7. They played Indiana and took them to the wire. So they have played a couple of big-time games this year and done well. They are 9-2 against the spread, and now they're playing Southeast Louisiana on the road. Now, this is the much tougher division, by the way. The Big Sky is one of the premier conferences out there. The Big Sky, the Missouri Valley, and the Colonial are top 3 conferences in the FCS. And here we have Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana's a great story. They've been doing really well under Frank Selfo. They're at home for this game. But you've got an Idaho team that's playing at a average game grade of 87.0 on the season, and you've got a Southeast Louisiana team that's playing at an average game grade of 78.2. Even given the home field edge, that's 81.2. That still says Idaho is the better team here. Idaho is only laying 3 points on the road. I like the way Idaho's been playing all season. I've been using them often here on the Phil Steele Plus tour. And so I like Idaho. And we'll take a look a little bit closer. Let's see if we got anything else besides the average game grade. They're number 4. They're number 25. You're only laying 3 on the road. And how has Idaho done on the road? They covered against Northern Arizona. They covered against Montana. They covered against Sacramento State, and they covered against Idaho State. So they're actually 6-0 against the spread on the road. I like Idaho minus the 3 over Southeast Louisiana in that one. And we got another one to take a look at. We're going to put Gardner-Webb on the left. They are a 3-point dog here against Eastern Kentucky. In Eastern Kentucky on the right. One thing I want to point out about Gardner-Webb, Chris, who wrote Gardner-Webb, and by the way, you get a complete FCS magazine right here. Chris wrote this one, and he was very high on Gardner-Webb coming into the season. Said they were going to have a great season, and guess what? They've had a really good season this year, especially against the spread. Look who some of their losses are to. Coastal Carolina, they lost to by 4. And that was Coastal fully loaded with their quarterback. They only lost by 4, and they outgained them 494 to 426. They go into Marshall and only lose 28-7. And Liberty, they lose 2 by 1. And once again, Liberty playing really well this year. So they've played 3 really good teams on the road, giving them a good effort in every single game. And that was 3 of their 5 losses this year. This is a good Gardner-Webb team. And the thing I like about this game, when you look at the Eastern Kentucky one, is Eastern Kentucky gives up rushing yards. They're giving up 225 yards per game, 5.4 yards per carry. The last 4 weeks, they're giving up 6.3 yards per carry. Look how Gardner-Webb's running the football. This is a good matchup. We got a strong running team against a weak rush defense. I like that. We've got a good quarterback in Bailey Fisher. He's got an 18-10 ratio. Not quite what Parker McKinney is, but he's got a good ratio. But I like the fact that we can run the football against a weak run defense, and these guys are giving up a boatload of yards as of late. As mentioned, 274, 6.3 yards per carry. We've got a 79.4, our number 24 team going against the number 33. We're an underdog here. We're battle-tested. We've already played teams like Coastal, Marshall, and Liberty on the road. I think we can handle Eastern Kentucky. I'm going to go with Gardner-Webb plus 3 over Eastern Kentucky in this one. So now let's take a look at 2 more games to wrap up your quick hitters. This will be a really quick hitter for you. It is in the FBS, and we're going to put TCU on the right because they're at home. We're going to put Iowa State on the left because they're on the road. And when you look at the wins, losses, TCU comes into this with 0 losses. Iowa State has got 1 Big 12 win all season. So it's a good team against a bad team, right? Well, not so fast. Let's take a look at the stats. TCU, and you would expect a team at TCU that's 8-0 to be plus 150, 125 yards per game in Big 12 play. They're plus 78. As you know, it's a narrow escape every week with them. Last week, they got outgained by 59 yards, got a late field goal to pull out the win. So they're only plus 78 yards per game. Iowa State, you'd expect them to be minus 120 at 1-7. They are plus 64. They've outgained almost every opponent they have played this year. Last week, they had a 176-yard edge against Texas Tech, 422 yards. They had one of their best offensive performances of the season against that Texas Tech defense last week, and yet came up short on the scoreboard. So what do I expect here? I expect Iowa State to be leading in the fourth quarter, TCU to somehow, some way pull this thing out at the end. But TCU and Iowa State are basically even statistically in the Big 12, and you've got an Iowa State team that's getting 10 points on the road. I like Iowa State plus 10. And finally, we'll wrap it all up in the Pac-12 with that game I mentioned a little earlier, Washington against Washington State. And I talked about the upper echelon of the Pac-12 this year. And I'll be honest with you, when Washington lost to Arizona State right here after losing to UCLA, I thought maybe Washington doesn't belong in the upper echelon. But They've won their last 5 games. They beat Oregon State, one of the upper echelon teams. They beat Oregon on the road, one of the upper echelon teams. They belong. And they're plus 95 yards per game this year. Washington State belongs in the lower half. They're minus 11. Now, how has Washington State performed against the upper echelon of the Pac-12 this year? Well, they've only played 4 of them. They lost to Oregon by 3, and that was a game they got outgained by 196 yards. It was even worse than that. It was 624 to 350, and Washington State drove 80 yards on the final drive and got a touchdown in the final seconds to make it the 44-41 final. So they were actually outgained almost 2-1 in that game. They lost to USC, an upper echelon team, by 16. They lost to Oregon State, an upper echelon team, by 14, and they lost to Utah by 4. Here they are only plus 2 at home in this one, and I think Washington is an upper echelon team. They're 0-4 against them this year. Those are the only 4 they played. And when they played Wisconsin, they actually won that game, but they were out first down 22-10. And then let's take a look at the series history. This is the Apple Cup. Washington has dominated the Apple Cup. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight wins, not a lot close. Last year, Washington was a dumpster fire. They lost their coach. They were an interim head coach. They were just trying to get out of the season. Washington State handed it to them, 40-13, and celebrated like it was 1999. Washington is playing with legitimate revenge here. They are an upper echelon team. They struggle against them. They're plus 95 yards per game in the Pac-12. They're minus 11. I'm taking Washington minus 2 over Washington State. Well, that was it. Once again, it's Thanksgiving. I'd like to wish you and yours a very happy Thanksgiving and safe holiday. Enjoy the football this weekend. I put a lot of time and effort into the Phil Steele Plus tour. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy Phil Steele Plus. And by the way, Thanksgiving, I'm going to watch some NFL. I'm actually going to start looking at NFL. I'll have an NFL play for you next week on the Phil Steele Plus tour. Until then, have yourself a very happy and safe Thanksgiving, and thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour.